Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. The title of this program is something like the Mandela Effect, Part 3. And that comes to mind because we had talked years ago about the Mandela Effect, and that would be part of what we were doing. The Mandela Effect is very unique, but it is strictly colored in its approach. It reminds you of Jomo Kenyatta in 1961. His first speech after liberation of Kenya was about accommodation, what have you, and so he had been in prison for about 9 years, and they let him out to resume the leadership of the Mau Mau movement. That was a great movement. And so when we look at Mr. Mandela, he had suffered 27 years in prison and all other kind of, I think they might have did his family as bad as anybody. In fact, his poor wife, they used to talk about Winnie all the time, but according to the record, Winnie did more time in isolation than I think anybody on record. And they really, but I liked in the movie, when she came out of prison, she said, when I went in, I was younger or something like that. And now she said, I'm grown now. She didn't say I'm grown, but she said, I'm not afraid anymore. In other words, they did her so bad, they broke all the, she held on. She held on as good psychologically as anybody I have seen that was she was technically in the hole. But she was different when she said that. And, so they had helped her grow. Of course, she didn't have too much forgiveness in her. Mandela was a proper leader of the movement because he was able to evolve. All those 27 years he did in prison, he wasn't the same when he came out of prison. He had observed what was going on, and he evolved. All the time he was in prison, he was evolving. They showed in the movie when some of the young guys came into Robben Island, him and a lot of the older brothers, they was clipping vines or something. This is this in the movie, on tomato plants or something. And they said, is this Mandela? And then he talked to the younger guys, and they said they was kind of arrogant. They were young people that, you guys that got old. Said, we out there cutting up. We take care of business. It won't be long these boys fall. But he just told them, he said, we're unified. We're unified. And this was a message that you would find throughout history. The great leaders was always able to unify their people, whoever their people were, or unify various tribes and racial and ethnic groups to do what they had to do. The reason I mention this is because we're going through a serious stage of evolution right now. And when we look at our situation, We could have went back to California a long time ago. We could have did this, we could have did that. But that was the reason we didn't do that. The reason that we didn't do those things is because we're doing, this is my belief, exactly what we're supposed to do right now. And one of the things that we have noticed that the system has not let up. The system is trying to keep us focused on something they want us to be focused on. Because they know a secret. When we focus on what we're about, we'll whoop their behind every time. We have. Okay, if people added up, they said, oh, that ain't nothing. We didn't slap boss man upside the head every time. And we have evolved to the proper state where we believe we should be every time, because we never allowed them to set the agenda, or we never allowed them to fully set the agenda. The closer we get to now, the more charge we have taken of our own lives. You could look at the people, I'm not going to call their names or anything, but they stay on the phone. They call every other day or every day or this and another. I don't answer the phone. I don't answer the phone because I'm afraid to talk to them. I don't answer the phone because there's nothing that they're trying to do but get me back to California. They're trying to get me back to California for good or for evil. They done messed up things so bad, they might want me back there to, go on and sue them and get the money. But that might have been their plan. Because after a while, they wouldn't keep doing this stuff unless they're okay, he didn't pass the test, so we want to. But that is not the proper thing. The proper thing is right now. This is the proper development. Okay? This is proper development at this time. And if you notice in our lectures and our talks, we go through different things about William Penn got a charter to establish Pennsylvania. Anybody went, okay, those are thoughts. Those are things that go through your mind when you're working toward not utopia, but our utopia. Okay, now, we're trying to develop a utopia for the people, but we're already in utopia. For us, utopia is the ability to fight the system over and over again, and the ability to forecast what the system is going to do. And part of it is something that we have never compromised for. We have kept the same attitude and what have you, but the thing that we noticed about all other movements in our history, they did not have longevity. That's why Martin Luther King said in his last talk, longevity has its place. But for him, he'd been to the mountaintop, and he so-called saw the promised land. He made, okay. But the promised land was the thing for him, was for the things that John Lewis and them was working on. That was getting a little piece of the system. Okay. For us, what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks is very unique. It has to do with evolution, and we're not, I'm not saying we don't care what people think, but in a way we don't. We don't care whether they like it, whether they don't like it, whether they're happy, whether they're upset about it. But we have to, this evolution is a very unique and strange process that it allows you to go to level after level, step after step. And it's part of evolution until you get to the stage where the questions are answered, all the questions are answered. Everything is in place for this period of time. In fact, we're locking in on this period of time that we're in. That means if we'll get more new information, but we're locking in on this period because this is the period that we've been waiting for, and this is the period of expectation. This is one of the periods where, like, what is one of the old revolutionaries? It might have been, not Marx, Lenin. Lenin said something about taking one step forward and 2 steps back. Does anybody remember that? One step forward and 2, yeah, okay. That was real. What he meant was they had just run into something. They had been talking about colonialism and how the colonial structure was going to collapse in on itself. But then he said there's something new going on. It's imperialism. It's a high stage of colonialism. And so in about 2019, 20 and 21, he said, we have to take one step forward. In other words, step off into that new world. But you have to take, in order to do that, 2 steps backwards. Now, technically that would be regressive. And for other so-called revolutionaries or young people, they say, man, I don't take no 1 step forward, 2 steps back. That means you just shoot all together. You're going backwards. And you technically are. If you kept that program up, you would back around the world into your old program again, going backwards. But this 1 step forward and this 2 steps backwards mean that we've been working for decades. What is the methodology that we would use for modern times? You know, we wrote many articles and we thought about, the revolution. What were some of them old titles? Revelation and Revolution. And we had put together our revelation and, Musa alayhi salam, Mustadafin. And it made a lot of sense. That was almost 30 years ago. Not 30 years ago, but it was almost 30 years ago. That was way back, that might have been about 27, 28 years ago. That's a while. Okay. Now we've all in a situation where 1 step forward means that we would integrate into this system. And this integration has nothing to do with infiltration and sabotage. I want everybody to hear that, and I want everybody to understand that. And I say that because it's not necessary. It's not necessary, number one, because the system has spent all of its time and energy trying to recruit us into the system, right? And this is what he wants, the system wants for us. We say, great. But not only do we say integrate into the system, but don't assimilate into the system. Do not become, now this don't mean the first 5 years. The first 5 years, keep your mouth shut, you know, don't hurt anybody and all of that. But the first 5 years, didn't y'all say they give you money to go back to school? The government. Well, keep going to school. Keep going to school, you know. When you ever have to arrest somebody, go on and arrest them. That may be for 5 years or 7 years, but now there's certain things we're dealing with. We're dealing with time constraints now. Before, if you go back even a short time ago, longevity. And that longevity served us well. Longevity is what got us here. Longevity is what taught us how to relax. Longevity taught us how to have sabr. And sabru wa nifsul iman. Patience is half of faith. So that taught us to be in charge of your own time. Don't let people poke you and make you move, right? That's the serious. And when we say 95% of ability is stickability, you stick to what you're doing. Don't worry about what they say, what they think, and what they do. Number one, you haven't found no revolutionaries no way. In other words, running around. Mellow Yellow is not, you know, New Yorkie type man. They're not. They're just not. Before I go much further, I want to stop and say this, that during this period, we want to cooperate, to bring certain other people along in this. Same thing they're already saying. We're going to bring them on board because this can't be an overnight thing. Plus, I want y'all to think about it, and our next program might be maybe even this Thursday or something where we discuss and we deliberate and we pull apart all of what we're talking about, because this time around, this is something that has a taste to it. This one has that taste. Just like when you see the guy shoot the ball and he turn around and go back. When they say the rule in basketball is follow the shot, right? But sometimes you see them shooting, they gone. Why? Because they tasted, they know it's in. That's the way this is. That's the way this is. It's not, that don't mean it has to be that way, but this is the feeling that we give, that we have about the era, the time, the place, and the circumstance. Just in brief, look at the news. Today, they got a couple of things in the news about Don. He having a jump from a red, orange jumpsuit. I don't know if y'all, you know, with his head on it. And there's two pictures like that. One on big news, and but look at the news. Look at the chaos. Look at the predictability, but unpredictability about what they're doing. Look at them people.
Lack of direction.
Good God Almighty. It's chaos. It's chaos, and this chaos is. They manufactured some of the chaos to get the chaos going, and they keep blowing smoke in there to keep it going. But this chaos is real. It is real chaos. And it is too chaotic to be. It has a pattern to it, so that means something is not giving it any rest. You know? In other words, if something happened in Iran every other week, if a ship go up, if this go out, that means there's somebody doing that. Somebody is keeping that going. You know what I mean? Okay, the same here in the United States. If this stuff is happening, the things that are happening in the United States, it's a reason behind it, and somebody is benefiting, or they feel they will benefit from it. And they're stoking the flames of disunity. No cooperation. If you match up the United States with China, just in buildings, all the buildings in America, old boxy skyscrapers, right? All the buildings in China are all brand new, big glass structures and everything. The system in China is on the ascendancy. It's expanding and it's growing at a rapid pace. In America, everything is collapsing in on itself. It is the classical Roman British Empire syndrome. It's a syndrome that all nations have when it's beginning to collapse in on itself. And basically there's technically there's nothing to hold it up. Okay, it may not collapse like it just fall down, a big puff of dust go up, but it's getting weaker and weaker. The global respect for the United States is going down and down and down.
Who said the U.S. is following the same path as the Soviet Union?
Who said that?
Putin.
Putin? Yeah. Of all people. Hey, man. And he ought to know.
Right.
The ideas that we have, or that we are instituting already amongst ourselves through these lectures, but we want to upgrade